So you know how every single thing these days has like a tier list or different levels? Like Netflix, you start at $7, then $15, then $20. You get more people, HD content, ultra content, no ads. It's basically different levels depending on how much money you're actually willing to pay, okay? The same thing happens when it comes to financial freedom. Depending on the level of financial freedom you actually want, is going to cost you more money or less money. And there are three main different levels that I'm actually going to break down in this video. Now, whenever I say I achieve financial freedom, what I'm actually saying is that I actually achieved level 1 of financial freedom, because level 2, I'm still working on it, and level 3 is going to take me about 5 years to actually accomplish. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how each level works, what each level actually has, and how to actually do the math to get to those numbers as fast as possible. Now, you don't need to be a math genius. All you need for this video is a calculator on your phone, okay? And a little bit of time to actually run the numbers, like 30 seconds or so, and you'll be just fine, all right? Now, as always, guys, my name is Tommy Bryson. I make videos from Monday to Friday, so make sure you actually subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the first thing, guys, is it's going to be baseline freedom. It's the first phase when it comes to financial freedom. And this one is by far the hardest, okay? And I say that because people think, well, it's the first one, it must be pretty easy. But no, making the first $100,000 is the hardest, because once you have money, you're able to make more money. But when you don't have any money, it takes a lot longer to actually get to those goals. So it takes time. Now, to actually run these numbers and accomplish this goal, which is basically the baseline, you're going to need what I call a bare bone budget, or triple B budget. This basically means a budget that is only going to take into account your absolute necessities. And that is it. Why exactly? Because you want to make enough passive income from your investments to cover your absolute necessities. So in case you do have an emergency, like for example, you don't have a job anymore, well, you're able to stay covered no matter what for a long, extensive period. And by the way, whenever you're using one of these financial freedom phases or types of parts, you want to make sure you have at least an emergency account for 3 to 6 months. This way, you don't have to dip into your financial freedom fund. This way, you can actually just cover that, because most likely by the time you actually go through your emergency account, that problem is going to be fixed and you can allow your investments to actually keep growing. But for the most part, how do you run this bare bone budget? The answer is take into account your shelter costs, which should not be more than 33% of your monthly income. Take into account also your utility bills, which is basically gas, water, electricity, your phone bill, and also your internet bill. These are kind of like necessities these days, but for the most part, you can find a phone bill. My phone bill right now, no joke, I am not kidding, I pay per month about well, hold up, let me just click it right here. Yeah, so here it is. I pay per month about $5 a month. That is my actual phone bill. I don't spend that much money. So if things got tight, I could basically just keep paying $5 for my phone bill, no problem. That's the idea. And your internet bill can usually find, for example, a bill that's like $20 or $25. Remember, it's the bare necessities. Number 3 on the necessities list is going to be groceries. You can't negotiate that. Why? Because if you don't eat, you die. It's that simple. My rule is basically $200 per person, excluding the kids. You can't use that math with kids, because usually kids just eat a portion of what adults eat. So it's not going to be a full $200 for them. It will be maybe like an extra $100 or $75 or so on, okay? And again, it's $200 per person, but what are you eating? You're not eating salmon. You're not eating ribeyes, okay? What are you eating? You're eating like chicken and rice and beans, and that's basically about it, okay? It's food to actually survive. And if things get really tight, well, you might have to go on that ramen diet, you know, like back in the college days. And lastly, you're going to have transportation costs. This means not your car payments, because that's not a necessity. I mean having a paid off car where you're covering your gas, your maintenance bill, and also insurance. Those are the main 3 when it comes to a car, and that's basically it. Now, if you're looking at me, I like using real numbers because this way it actually helps you guys out. Remember, I live in Dominican Republic, so my numbers are a lot lower. When I lived in Puerto Rico, they were a little bit higher. When I lived in New York, they were actually the lowest because back then I lived with my mom. But for the most part, there are always ways to lower your bills, so don't make excuses for where you live or how many kids you have or you have this problem, because for the most part, you can always make things work. So just look around how you can make things work. If you say I can't, your brain doesn't think. If you say how can I, your brain starts thinking and trying to find solutions. So me personally, I spend about $900 a month on my baseline budget, okay, or my bare bone budget. That's it. So to run the numbers to see exactly how much money I need to have invested to give me that much money in passive income, well, the answer is my primary way of investing right now is via the stock market. My investments, which is just one in the Vanguard S&P 500 fund, well, makes me about like 10 to 12% a year. The rule is I can only take out 4% as a withdrawal rate because this way I don't run out of money for at least a minimum of at least 33 years. That's the idea, okay? So basically, if I spend $900 on shelter, utilities, groceries, transportation, and I multiply this by 12, annually, I'm spending about $10,800, okay? Which is a good chunk of money. Now, the idea is just divide this number by 0.04 if you're going to be doing stock investing, okay? Which is the way I'm doing it. Just click equals, and it says right here, I need about $270,000. So let's say, for example, I stop working completely. And every single year, I take 4% out of my investments. That would be $10,800. But also, my investments keep growing because I'm only taking out a portion of the profits. So I keep growing my investments, and every single year, I get to take about a little bit more money from my investments. That is the general idea. And because this is less than the standard deduction, I don't have to pay any taxes on it. So that's also pretty cool. But again, that's only phase one. It's obviously not going to be like, hey, Tommy, you're living a luxurious lifestyle. No, obviously, it's just basically the basics. Now, let's get to type 2 of financial freedom, or what I like to call it, level 2 of financial freedom. Now, level 2 is what we call surplus financial freedom. And it's surplus because it's extra money than what you actually need to survive. So it's having your bare bone budget and having at least 50% extra money for actual life enjoyment. Now, what is this life enjoyment? It can mean, for example, going on vacations, buying things like these that I love buying, Nintendo Switches, buying new iPads, doing what you actually get the most enjoyment out of. For me, it's usually like buying technology, maybe saving up for vacation and eating out and going out to places with my friends and maybe buying gifts and so on. Those things bring a lot of enjoyment to me. So that's where that money usually goes for me personally. Now, why is it just 50%? Because 50% is usually going to be more than enough. You can start enjoying it. And if I made it, for example, like 100%, it would just take a long time to actually get there. That's the idea. So for me personally, again, the math is pretty simple, okay? If I'm spending $900, that's my baseline. And by the way, very important fact here. When you actually are making extra money, you don't want to basically increase your fixed expenses, because your investments could always go down in value. And when that happens, you want your baseline to stay the absolute same. So what I mean is this, okay, guys, I can take the extra 50% of my money and buy vacations, buy gifts, buy electronics, go out to eat, right? Those things I can do whenever I want to or not do, right? But I'm not going to go ahead and say, well, I'm making some extra money, I'm going to go ahead and basically rent a more expensive apartment, or I'm going to buy a more expensive house. I would not do that because that's pretty stupid. Because if my investments go down in value, well, these fixed costs are going to stay the same, and I'm not going to be able to actually cover it. That's the idea. So when you have 50% extra money in there and your investments go down in value, you'll still have enough to actually cover your baseline, your bare bone budget. That's the idea. So that's why you don't want to change it. Okay. So here's the math here. Okay. So my number is obviously $900. I'm going to increase it by 50%. How do you do that? Just click multiply by 1.5, and that tells me, hey, that's around $1,350 or an extra $450 a year. Now, how much extra money do I need to have invested? Remember, the last number was $270,000. Well, this number is going to be multiply this by 12 And again, remember, you want to divide it by 0.04 because it's 4% withdrawal. And that's going to give me around 405,000. That is an extra $135,000. It is a lot more money just for a 50% increase. This is what I mean, okay? It can be a lot of money, and it's a good chunk of money, okay? But this way, you have a lot more enjoyment out of life, okay? That's the idea. And obviously, to get to 270, it takes a lot of work. To get to 405 is going to take less time because your investments are going to be growing a lot faster because you have more money in there. That's the idea, okay? So that's one part. Now let's move on to the third part of financial freedom, level 3, which is going to be basically pretty tough, okay? And it's basically thrive in freedom. Now, thrive in freedom isn't just about having more money for spending, but it's also having more money for safety and also having more money to pay taxes, because at this point, you're probably gonna have to pay taxes with a portion of your income. Now, how much more money do you actually need? The answer is about 3x. That basically means 3 times what your bare bone budget actually is. Why exactly, Tommy? Why so much money? Well, think about this, okay? If you have 3 times what you actually need in your investment account that's coming in from passive income, then in reality, the stock market can go down by like 50%, 75%. You don't have to worry that much because you have 3 times more than you actually need. That grants you safety, that grants you consistent income basically, and you don't have to worry that much. That's why you want 3x. Now, obviously, this takes a little longer. You know, if I stop investing right now and I don't invest another penny, it's going to take me about 13 years to actually get to this number. But now let's run the math, okay? So far, we're at 270 for level 1, we're at 405 for level 2, and for level 3, can you guess what the number's gonna be? Well, again, 900 multiplied by 3, because you want 3x the money, right? That's gonna be $2,700 a month, multiplied by 12 here. That's 32,400 divided by 0.04. That's going to be around $810,000. That's double what level 2 actually was. That is a lot of money. And by that point, you have enough to cover your baseline, like a lot more sufficient, have enough to actually enjoy life, have enough to pay taxes, and have enough more money to actually just do a lot more things that you actually want to do. That's the cool thing, okay? So think about it like this, guys, okay? If you have 810,000, and you multiply by 0.04, that's $32,000, right? Now let's say you only get to keep around, like, let's say like 80% because after taxes, right? Well, I can keep like 25,000 or whatever, right? That's just an average rate of taxes. It's probably gonna be even less taxes, okay? But for the most part, and I'm only spending $10,000 a year, basically, well, that's $15,000 extra. That's like double my income. What do I do with this? Well, I can save it for 2 years and buy me a brand new $30,000 car, or I can just do whatever I want. It's a lot of cash. Now, there is a trick here to actually get to these goals even faster, because I will continue to invest, and the math shows, God willing, I will be able to potentially get to that number in about 4 to 5 years. Now, how? Okay. Well, remember, the stocks, we have a common rule of taking out 4%. But if you actually use real estate, you can make anywhere from 6 to 8% to 12% larger returns because you are taking more risks. So for the most part, if I'm trying to make $900 a year, right, multiply that by 12, if I'm making 6% from real estate, well, that's only going to require about $180,000. That is literally $90,000 less. That's a big difference from the stock market. But remember, you have to worry about vacancies, maintenance, other expenses, and there is appreciation, but obviously real estate is a little less liquid than the stock market. But it's a lot of money in savings here. Now, what about level 2? Level 2 was 405. Remember that, okay? So literally, we're looking at 1350. That was my goal, right? Multiply by 12. Well, at 6%, that is going to be, well, about $270,000, right? So level 1 is now going to be level 2 with real estate because I'm making more money. And for level 3, which was over $800,000, well, to make, for example, 900 times 3 multiplied by 12 divided by 0.06, which is basically 6%, I'm just going to need around $540,000 in real estate. So what is my plan overall? Well, I have enough money in the stock market right now to make me about $1,000 per month, which is pretty cool. But for the other like $1,700 that I actually need to actually be thriving in a way, because my lifestyle is not that crazy, guys. To actually be thriving, I'm going to get that money from basically real estate investing. Now, why would I do this? Why not just stick to example for the stock market? Well, the idea is the stock market is great, but the stock market, it has ups and downs, and you want a little bit more stability, at least in my case, okay? I want to be able to sleep better at night. So that means if I have X amount of money in the stock market and I'm able to have X amount of money in real estate, well, sometimes I can have vacancies in real estate, but most likely I'm not going to have 4 properties vacant while the stock market is also going down 50%. That's highly unlikely. So the stock market is down. I'm probably gonna have my rents coming in. If I have some vacancies, the stock market is still gonna be there. So that's the point. You have a little bit more wiggle room to actually play around with. But that's the math and that's the idea, guys. So for this video, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I hope you just weren't watching. I hope you were actually doing your numbers. So I want you guys to comment down below your numbers, okay? For level 1, which is baseline freedom, level 2, which is surplus freedom, and level 3, which is thriving freedom. And remember, level 1 is just your bare bone budget. Level 2 is just 50% extra, and level 3 is going to be 3 times what your actual bare bone budget actually says you need. That's the idea. Now remember, okay, here's the craziest part about this video, that no matter how you slice it, you're still going to be saving a lot of time. Because remember, for the average person, they have to wait until they're 65 to get through their goals, but that's because they have crazy high expenses. And there is one big hack here, and the hack is if you can actually get your home paid off, then the amount of money your bare bone budget need is going to go down substantially. Okay, so let's say, for example, you have your bare bone budget. If you have no cost for shelter and that's at 0, or just like, let's say like $200 for taxes or whatever, $200 for taxes, right? And then utilities, groceries, transportation, and you have everything paid off, you have no debt, the amount of money you actually need is going to be a lot less per month. That's the cool thing about living here in DR. I will be buying a personal property in the next few years. I don't have one right now because it doesn't make any sense for me, and I just sold the one I had in Puerto Rico. But for the most part, it doesn't make sense right now. But if you actually have a paid off property, and that should be your goal, I have a video for that, okay? If you're not there yet, and it's called the 33% rule when it comes to buying a property. You can actually find that video on YouTube where I'll teach you how to buy a property and pay it off in less than like 15 years. That's the idea. Guys, thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified, and comment down below why I asked you to comment down below so I know you watched till the end of the video and you also know your numbers, all right? All right, peace out, peace out, peace out. Long-term team out.